We are live. Welcome everyone to Il Gioco podcast, another episode. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Shane Hensley, the founder of Pinnacle Entertainment Group and the creative force behind Savage Worlds and Deadlands. Shane, it's fantastic to have you with us, especially as we celebrate Deadlands' 30th anniversary this year. Hi, Shane. Buongiorno, Shane. Thank you. Shane, first off, how does it feel to celebrating 30 years of?
One of the great things that's happened is I've reached back out to so many of the people that contributed to Deadlands along the way. So I'm talking again with some people I haven't spoken with in 20 or 25 years. And that's been really nice.
When you launched it back in 1996, did you ever imagine we'd still be talking about it 3 decades later?
I did not. And in fact, that's why we did Hell on Earth, which is the sequel to it, the post-apocalyptic sequel, because I figured we'd have about a 2-year run and then we'd blow the world up and do the post-apocalyptic Western. And then when Deadlands became a hit, we had to change those plans a little bit, but that was the idea.
How the gaming industry has changed in these years.
Oh, so much.
Mm. Our Italian audience has embraced the Savage Wars enthusiastically since the beginning, over the years. What is it about the system that seems, in your opinion, to resonate across different gaming cultures and countries?
I think you were asking me how the game industry has changed, and I took it as a
Yes.
comment. So let me answer that first. Um, there are some pretty big events in the game industry. When I first started, distributors and stores would order quite a bit, but they did not pay their bills on time. It was
Mm.
very hard to get paid. Then Magic came along, Magic the Gathering, and stores and distributors had money, but they put it all towards card games. So they didn't order as much, but they did pay on time.
Mm.
I'd say the next big change for us was the open gaming license with D20. So that and the ability for people to do desktop publishing more easily on their own, and with the license, brought in a ton of new companies and designers. So the industry was suddenly full of thousands of new games rather than dozens, right? So we had to compete more with everyone. And then PDFs were a big change because suddenly we could sell electronically everywhere. Uh, and the stores got really angry about that. But I grew up in a very rural country area of one of the states in the United States, Virginia. And we didn't have bookstores, we didn't have game stores, anything like that. So being able to get electronic versions of games was a big deal to me. And we've, even now in the modern age, especially our international customers, because shipping is so expensive, really appreciate PDF versions. And they're searchable, and it's easier for storage and so on. And then finally, the next really big change after that was crowdfunding, Kickstarter, right? Because now the stores weren't ordering as much, the distributors weren't ordering as much. Our customers still wanted the product, but it was hard to communicate with them because of all the competition. So here comes Kickstarter, where not only can we reach people directly, we also get 100% of the cover price of a book, where we used to get 40%,
And all over the world.
and all over the world. And we can sell the PDFs and the physical products right there. And we can make premium physical products like the coins or the dice we have in the current Deadlands Kickstarter. Those are things that would have been very difficult for us to do in the past as a small to medium sized company. So that's how the game industry has changed to me. There are other ways too, but those are the big events. And then you asked me about what about our system has appealed to players
Mm.
around the world, with starting with Deadlands and then Savage Worlds. It's easier to answer for Deadlands. So I knew from the beginning. I was a designer for a game called Torg, from West End Games, and they had cards, and they had something called possibilities, which are like fate points or now bennies that let you re-roll and so forth. And I knew we wanted something like that in the original Deadlands. And I wanted to embrace the flavor of the Western, especially being a big fan of not only American Westerns, but Italian Westerns as well, which are some of the best.
Spaghetti Western. Sergio
Absolutely.
Leone, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Right. Fantastic. So that gave us poker chips to represent, fate points or possibilities or whatever you want to call them. Cards for initiative. I find static initiative very boring, and I love seeing the gameplay interaction of the cards as initiative. Who will go first? Do you go before the bad guys? Can you spend chips to get cards, etc.? And that combined with Deadlands to feel very Western, right? So it all fit very well, and that, I guess, that hit at just the right time in the late 90s, where everyone was looking for more than just roll a die, do some damage. They wanted that immersion of all the pieces. And then the gameplay elements worked so well that even when we did non-Westerns, like our sequels or other settings like Rippers or Flash Gordon, that just having something tangible in your hand for re-rolls, having cards for initiative still worked really well just for gameplay. And it's lasted to this day, and I think they're two of the best parts of the system.
Let's go back to the beginning. I understand that a piece of artwork from a White Wolf supplement, a Confederate Vampire by Brome, helped inspire Deadlands. Can you tell us the original story?
Sure.
Or...
So in 92 to 96, I was a freelance designer. I worked for TSR and FASA and West End Games and all the big American companies. And I was at a Gen Con or an Origins, I think it was Gen Con, probably 94. It's in the book, and I have all the details there, the celebration book I was talking about, but I think 94. And that cover was used as the cover of White Wolf magazine first. So that's where I saw it. And I had a 16-hour drive back from the convention to my hometown. And during that drive through the night, I couldn't get the image of that undead Confederate out of my mind. And I didn't think about him as a Civil War soldier. I thought about him as a cowboy bursting up from the grave in Boot Hill. Boot Hill being a slang term for cemeteries in the Old West. And I thought, well, what must be so important to this person that they're coming back from the dead to continue, right? Was it a wrong they feel they need to avenge? Was it they need to rescue their love? Whatever it could be. And from that, I just started thinking of all the things you could do if you came back as this undead, monstrous hero. And then later on, as I was trying to think of a name for it, the word harrow kept coming up, which in English means dragged forth from the earth, which sounded perfect, right? And I wanted something distinctive, not just undead or revenant or something. So harrowed is what it became. And then from that, I had to build onto the mythology of, well, how did this happen? Why did it just start happening? And that's where the Reckoners and the Four Horsemen and the biblical apocalypse all came from, and it just built from there. And then a lot of other great people contributed ideas and built a world, which is the fun thing about creating a world. You start with a vision, and you need to have a strong vision, but then other people add great parts. Yeah, and then it's a living world, and we all are a part of it now.
How did Cowboys and Zombies become this rich, complex universe, in your opinion?
How did it become a complex universe for us?
Yes.
Yeah, I think in just the way I said, we needed a way to explain why a hero was coming back from the dead and why an evil creature was inside him animating his body and so forth. That led to the Reckoning and the Four Horsemen and them coming back. And what was great about that is now we had a timeline. This happened in the Old West period. 1863 is when they first came back. But we told this story of these first Americans or Native Americans, Indians, bottling those spirits up many, many years ago in the hunting grounds. and that led to Deadlands Dark Ages, which we just came out with last year. So we've got this continuing story and a mythology now that's gone from Deadlands Dark Ages to the Weird West to Hell on Earth to Reloaded and Noir, which is the 30s gangster kind of period. So it just came about naturally from the timeline.
But that, as you were saying, Deadlands has expanded far beyond the original Weird West setting. Hell on Earth, Lost Colony, Lost Noir, and now Dark Ages. What drives you to keep exploring different time periods and genres within this Deadland universe?
Well, I think like everyone, I have many interests, right? I love Lord of the Rings and the Goon and Marvel and everything else that all of us love. And being able to move our world into different genres and play science fiction Deadlands and post-apocalyptic Deadlands and fantasy Deadlands is just a lot of fun to both play in and to write for. And you ask about Undead and Cowboys, I don't know if this will resonate for Italians, but Reese's peanut butter cups in America, there are these classic commercials. You got your peanut butter in my chocolate, and they make something better than the two bits by themselves. So I think Undead and Cowboys, they just really naturally went together. And the other kind of secret sauce to that is if I have to explain the Reckoning and the Harrowed and all that to somebody, that's a lot, right? But if I just say it's zombie cowboys, they get it. And you don't have to know all that big backstory. We do, because it creates the playground where all these things happen. But for your casual average player, they just got to know, okay, there's zombies and there's cowboys. Cool.
It's enough.
Yeah.
Deadlands has won 9 Origin Awards of the years, which is extraordinary. What do you think has kept it relevant and award-worthy across the 3 decades of gaming evolution?
You broke up a little bit there. Could you repeat
Oh,
the question?
okay. I will repeat. Deadlands has won 9 Origin Awards over the years, which is extraordinary. What do you think has kept it relevant and award-worthy across 3 decades of gaming evolution?
Well, that's a great
In
question.
your
I guess,
opinion, in your opinion.
yeah, I guess one is my tenacity. I just never quit. I love it. I keep making stuff for it. A lot of other horror westerns and fantasy westerns have come and gone, and I think if you're not, it's much easier to make a big fantasy game, right? Fantasy is the most popular genre. Science fiction would be the second most popular. So I think a lot of people see our success and they think, well, I'm going to make a better horror western, and then when it's not as big as they hope it is, they tend to go away, right? But we do pretty well. But I just love our world and I just keep making stuff for it, so it stays there. But I think what makes it relevant as a genre and a topic, one of the things about westerns, which is why they may not be the most popular genre in film and fiction, but they never quite go away, is because they rely on a sense of rugged individualism, right? If you are a settler on the frontier, there's no YouTube to show you how to build the cabin. There's no telephone to call the police when the bad guys arrive. It is on your own. And that works very thematically and makes us feel like heroes. And it works very well for a horror game, which requires isolation and being able to fight back yourself, right? Take care of yourself.
You have mentioned having huge plans for this 2026. Without spoiling everything, what can fans expect from you?
So I think most of it is visible now. So besides the Deadlands Celebration book, which I think people will really enjoy, it includes everything from the mini movie attempts we've had to the video game attempts to the story of Bruce Campbell, the star of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, playing Deadlands at a LARP, and so many cool backstories. The new combined book with Deadlands and our core rules all in one place. And then probably I think the biggest and coolest thing is the event we're doing right here in Arizona where I live. Mm-hmm. So there are numerous ghost towns, some of which are open to the public to use for events and so forth. One of them is called Rawhide. and we're having a huge event there for people. We're going to run games. We're going to do paintball shootouts. We're going to do cowboy feasts, all kinds of amazing stuff. But I think the coolest thing we do there, they have an event called the Zombie Apocalypse, and they have an entire Western town that you run through fighting actual zombies, people playing zombies with laser tag, right? And it's an incredible experience. My family and I did it last year, and we're encouraging our fans who come out to this event to dress up in their best Deadlands gear for it, run through the crawl.
Wonderful. Let's switch now to Savage Worlds. Okay.
Okay.
Fast, furious, and fun. This has become the motto of Savage Worlds. Can you break down what each of those three words means to you as a designer? And
Yeah.
how do they translate into actual mechanics?
Okay, sure. So first off, I recognize that Savage Worlds is now 23 years old itself.
Mhm.
Okay. So some of the concepts, if we were redesigning it today, there's probably things I would do even faster, more furious, and more fun. But it has held up very well for 23 years and all the different genres we've made, right? So super proud of it. So fast, my original statement on fast was, and this is not to slam D&D. I love D&D. I love D20 is fine, right? But I was playing a large game of D&D. It was a high level game, and trying to track all of the different, hit points on every single skeleton in a large fight or something like that was a little bit tedious, and it took a while. And the fight kind of took a while. So we thought that our skill resolution and damage resolution mechanics were much faster. And I think over time, as the game has grown and added in a lot of aspects, we're still pretty fast. I think the fights go a little faster too, though. So rather than a 20 round combat, it tends to be 4 or 5 rounds is about how long a Savage Worlds combat lasts. And big things happen in 4 or 5 rounds, especially because of the way initiative and cards work and all that, right? So you might there's a lot of gameplay just in who goes first. You want to make sure you go, before the big bad guy who's going to kill you. You want to make sure that if something is shaken, that you hit it before it unshakes, because 2 shaken means a wound, etc. Okay. So furious, same thing. We wanted stuff to happen quickly. We didn't really want an ablative hit point system. We wanted figures to be up, down, or off the table, right? So they're up and they're fighting, they're down and they're out, or they're getting back up, or they're just gone. They're dead, they're wounded, whatever. Now that causes a little bit of problem for the big bads, and we've adjusted that since with rules like unstoppable or resilient to give them extra wounds, things like that. So the game has grown from that original concept too. And then fun, I think the most important aspect of fun is the exploding dice. When I go to a convention and there's one room where everyone is very seriously studying their character sheets and they're marking off, 1 or 2 hit points or whatever. And the next table over, somebody runs a 42 playing Savage Worlds and they go, yeehaw! That's what we want, right? We want to be the rowdy table at the convention.
When you created Savage Worlds, generic systems weren't as common as they are today. What convinced you that one system could handle everything from fantasy to sci-fi to horror? What were the design challenges that you have?
Okay, so I was a big fan of GURPS back in the day, but I felt GURPS had a little trouble scaling for supers. And Savage Worlds came from the Great Rail Wars, which was a miniatures game for Deadlands. And then we made a property called Weird Wars, starting with Weird War 2. And I actually ran RPG sessions using the Great Rail Wars rules for some friends on this very long trip in the early 2000s. And it worked so well for tank battles and B-17 fights and all the stuff that I was doing that I thought, well, I'll use this for. We were running, or a friend of mine was running Game of Thrones in GURPS at the time, and it was really fun and it was great. But the moment we added in our house troops, we had 10 or 12 non-player characters per player, things really bogged down. So I said, well, why don't we try using our Great Rail Wars rules for that? And he did, and it went beautifully. It was so fun. So now I had played Deadlands, Weird War II, and Game of Thrones in it, and I thought, well, this works pretty well across all these genres, and if we make these tweaks, I think it can handle everything from supers and everything else. And at the same time, I already had a concept for a universal rules system called Savage Worlds that was going to be a D20 based game, and it was pitched to another company at the time. That company wound up shutting down their games division, so I kept the concept of Savage Worlds, but we already had a game system that we loved and worked, so I decided to marry the two together, and that's where it came from.
Let's talk about a little more about the signature of Savage Worlds, the exploding dice systems, where I will explain to our audience. Rolling maximum means you keep rolling, and it's a beloved mechanics by players. What inspired this mechanic, and how does it support your design philosophy?
Yeah, it definitely came from my design experience on Torg, where if you roll a 10, you roll the d20 and roll again. If you roll a 20, you roll the d20 and roll again. And I saw how much fun that was, and how it also led to desperate times, right? Your character's backed into a corner with no hope, but you just happen to roll that 10 or that 20 in Torg, and suddenly you've changed things around and become the hero, right? And in Savage Worlds, I really embrace that. So even the lowliest goblin can kill a paladin. And that actually was inspired by something that happened way back in college in about 1987. My college dungeon master, John Goff, who wrote a lot of Deadlands materials, he was running the old TSR adventure, The Isle of Dread, and his friend John was playing a fighter, another John, and his AC was so high that the thousands of orcs that were gathered around him could not hurt him. They literally could not hurt him. Now, this is old D&D, right? And I thought, well, that's just silly. So I wanted to make sure that the lowliest goblin could kill a careless paladin if he let them gang up on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was that whole element of danger and excitement that we wanted to build in. And exploding dice are a part of that, because a goblin with a D4 strength is going to need to explode a few times to do that kind of damage. But it can happen, and I've seen it happen.
Another great mechanic, the banning system, is another distinctive feature of Savage Worlds. These tokens that let players influence the story. How do you balance giving your players the narrative control while keeping the master's authority intact?
Yeah, I don't have much trouble with this myself, and in the groups I've played in. I know some do. They think too many bennies gives the players too much control. And in my experience, if bennies are really scarce, the players save them up just for to soak damage from wounds, because they're too afraid not to have them, because those are our system's hit points, right? They just work a little differently than D20, for example. If you give them in the amount that I think you should give them, which is probably 3 or 4 a session on top of the 3 you start with, then people get a little agency over how cool they are. So, for example, a thief wants to open a locked chest. This actually happened in one of our games, and he fails the roll, right? And everybody's watching him, and you think, well, it's not a big deal. You just failed to open a chest. But that character has prided himself on being the best thief in town, and he can't even open a locked chest. So now he's got a Benny that he can spend to try again, right? And that makes him feel good because he has some agency over his character and how he is perceived by the others. And with a generous flow of bennies, he doesn't have to hoard them because he's afraid he's going to die later on, right? Now, you certainly can do too many. If somebody's sitting on 8 bennies, they're probably not going to worry too much when the big bad hits them in the final act. But that hasn't generally been a problem in the games I've seen. And you can always, there's kind of a soft limit too, right? If you're the game master and one of your players is sitting on 5 or 6 bennies, you don't need to give them a benny every time they make a great joke or do something in character. Let the use your authority to control the flow of the story. This character hasn't done a whole lot to get bennies, and I know they're in danger. So if they do anything, I'm going to give them a benny and make them feel good, right? And the other way I think that's great. So I've played a lot of purely narrative RPGs as well with no dice, and they're great. I have a wonderful time. But the more shy players don't get the spotlight as much as everybody else, right? So awarding bennies works the same way. They may not get as many as someone else, but because you get bennies whenever a joker comes up, everyone gets them, right? And the GM can also use them as a little incentive when they push themselves a little bit, use that as a reward for positive reinforcement, so they come out of their shell a little bit, get into character, and play the game as loudly as everyone else, right?
Okay. I am noticing right now that I am that's the wrong comment below your video. Okay, I will settle that after the live stream. Okay, let's talk about a little about licensing success of Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds has become a platform for so many different settings: Rifts, Pathfinder, Flash Gordon, Weird Wars, and in Italy, Ultima Fortune. How do you approach licensing, and what makes a good fit for the Savage World system, in your opinion?
What makes a good fit?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. I think anything works in Savage Worlds, um, with one caveat. So what we see a lot, people will say Savage Worlds doesn't work for fantasy because they've only tried playing D20 and think it needs to work like D20. So D20 is about managing your hit points primarily, right? Through rest, healing potions, healing spells, etc. It's managing resources. And our resources are fewer. There's power points and there's bennies. So we handle Savage Pathfinder great. It plays wonderfully. I've played hundreds of hours of it now, and so have our fans. But it doesn't play like Savage Pathfinder, right? It doesn't play exactly the same way as Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder does in their systems, where it's about whittling down your hit points and the monster's hit points. It's a different system. So what we've learned is when we take on a setting like Palladium's Rifts, or Pathfinder, we translate the world, not the system. Now, there are aspects of the system we want to capture and not own, but generally we want to make sure we bring the fun of the world and the setting in because it's going to play a particular way on our side. Now, we do use setting rules, and I think that's what makes us a little different than most generic systems. The game fundamentally changes based on the setting. So in Solomon Kane, for example, you get red rage, right, which works like our conviction mechanic. You get to add dice to your rolls because that's how Robert E. Howard's Solomon Kane stories read and then play out in our game. In Pathfinder, it's not about items as much as it is in most D20 games. They're there and they're fun, but the items that we award tend to have bigger effects rather than lots of plus ones, because the D20 math curve is all about trying to stay just ahead of the monsters at the level that you're fighting, right? And items give you that little bump as you go up the progression chart of levels. Probably getting a little too technical there, but we read and understand these things as game designers. And then, it's really about what's cool about Flash Gordon. Well, it's not even a mechanical thing for Flash, for example. Flash is always getting captured. Well, when's the last time your RPG group let themselves be captured? Never, right? Hardly ever.
Mhm.
So we introduce a mechanic in there that they can let themselves be captured and they get something for it. And that starts a whole different chain of adventures. And that's what our cliffhanger token and rules are for, right? So we really try to live in that world mentally and understand what it's all about and make it cool, and then find mechanics that work for that.
Okay, let's go a little beyond tabletop. Let's talk about video game experience.
Okay.
You have worked in video games, City of Heroes, City of Villains at Cryptic
Hmm.
Studios, and even a planned Deadland MMORPG. How did that experience in digital gaming influence your tabletop design?
I would say that my tabletop experience influenced my video game
Uh,
design,
the
but
reverse.
yeah, but I think plot point campaigns, which are something we do in Savage Worlds. So a plot point campaign, for those who don't know, is there are um, there's something going on in the world, right? So let's take 50 fathoms, for example. In 50 fathoms, the world is drowning. And we want the players to find out why it's drowning, gather up items to stop it, and then fight the creatures that are causing that to happen, right? That's the big campaign backstory. But we also want you to do whatever you want to do. So it's because it's a sandbox style campaign as well. So if you want to be a pirate, you can be a pirate. If you want to trade goods, you can do that. If you want to chase pirates, you can do that. But the background events are going to happen no matter what you do. And as you interact with them, the story will continue to unfold and you'll be drawn into it and be a part of it. So the old Sid Meier's Pirates video game was great for that,
I have
right?
it. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So you're
Wonderful,
trying to find your
wonderful video
sister,
game.
right? You're trying to find your sister, but you can do whatever you want in the game, and
Yeah.
clues will drop as you adventure around the map and do do fun things. And that was an inspiration for, well, why don't we do that? So that's how we try to do it. Some of our plot point campaigns tend to be a bit more linear, but most are you do what you want and these things will happen. And video games, especially MMOs, are like that as well. There are big plots that you can get involved with in City of Heroes and City of Villains, but mostly you run around and do what you want because that's what most of us want as players. I've come up with an idea. I want to go be a bounty hunter or uh, uh, ruthless avenger or whatever, right? And I don't want the story to tell me I'm doing something else completely instead.
You started with a game store in Blacksburg while at Virginia Tech, then built Pinnacle, worked in video games, and came back to tabletop. That's quite a journey. How has each phase informed you understanding of what players want?
I guess it happened pretty naturally.
Hmm.
I was a player in high school of Dungeons and Dragons, loved it. When I got to college, we played a lot of GURPS and Warhammer and miniatures. I played a lot of historical miniatures, and then I started. Me and three friends, my wife and two other friends, started a game store called Fun and Games, which is still in business to this day in Blacksburg, Virginia. And I got to talk with hundreds of customers every single week who would tell us what they were playing and what they were enjoying about it and what they hated about it, right? Even before there were forums and social media to tell you these things. So not only did I hear from them what they enjoyed, but I saw what they purchased as well, right? What do they say versus what they actually buy? Sometimes people will say they hate something while they're bringing you an armload of it and buying it at the register, right? So I think that informed a lot of my early beginnings. And then, my boss at Cryptic Studios, Jack Emmert, he says the most important thing that everybody on the team has to do is play the game. And that's what we do. Whatever games we're making, we play the hell out of. I play Rifts. I play Pathfinder. I play everything we make. And me and the design team, we cut stuff out when it's not working, and we emphasize the stuff that we think is just amazing.
Okay, let's talk about game design. That is our favorite matter argument. One
Okay.
thing players love about Savage Worlds is how quickly new players can jump in, but there's still a depth of for experienced gamers. How do you achieve that balance? And what is your approach to complexity in your design?
Yeah. So we spend a lot of our time thinking about how to get new players into our game, right? Because we all want bigger communities, so we sell more books, so we can live and eat. And for that, I think it's the character archetype cards that we make are fantastic because I can hand you a card with a full color picture of your character, a fun quote that kind of gets you into their personality, and all the stats and abilities and weapons and stuff you need, just like that, right? That was a big deal for us to start implementing those. And then the game is you'll have to figure out a word to translate this into Italian, but we call it swingy, swingy. The game swings
Hmm.
quite a bit
Quite a bit.
numerically, right? So well, you need a 4 on these dice, but you might roll a 30, right? So that can happen a lot. So the game can kind of swing back and forth, and that's really good for new players because it makes it very exciting. Anything can happen. But where a lot of our expert players live is mitigating that, or making sure that if the bad guy gets a 30 against them, how are they going to defend against it, right? So they take the Elan edge and the Iron Jaw edge to make sure that when they go to soak against that damage, they're not wiped out by it, right?
Hmm.
Same thing with as you get higher in rank in the game, you have more edge combinations to really take advantage of the rules. We think that it's pretty well balanced so that uh, it doesn't get too out of whack. But an experienced player will definitely have an advantage over somebody who doesn't understand how their edges work together, and that's pretty important in some of the big boss fights.
Okay. You have created both universal mechanics and very specific settings. Do you start when you design your games with the mechanical ideas and then find settings for them, or does the setting drive the mechanics? That's a
Yeah,
usual
we're
question.
definitely yeah, we're definitely setting first. As I mentioned earlier, if we're going to make a Flash Gordon or a Solomon
Mhm.
Kane or a Deadlands, we want to find the setting rules that play to the tropes of those things. I immerse myself in whatever it is I'm making. So if I'm doing when we did Deadlands Noir, now John Goff wrote it, but I was part of it, and I watched every noir film I could find, right? And that not only informed the choices for the game, it also informed what the art would look like. And the fact that we used all black and white art except for one color element in each, and what did that color mean and what did it signify? So I think it's about immersion in the setting you want to make, and then communicating that through the art and the game design to the players.
Hmm. Let's talk about playtesting now. With the 30 years of design experience, how has your approach to playtesting evolved? What do you look for when you put a new idea in front of players?
Um, I would say we don't we don't worry too much these days about whether someone will like a setting. We have it in mind, we want to do it, and if we're excited about it, we're pretty sure others will be too, and that has been true. But where we've definitely changed and gotten better is, when you're younger, you play test among your friends, and you publish it, and maybe you take written feedback or market feedback, and over the years you integrate it. But these days we have a much better system. When we are about to print a book, we put out the manuscript a couple of weeks before it goes to press
Mhm.
so people can read it, give us feedback, tell us what's not clear,
Ghost Press.
and that's a big deal.
Ghost
Hmm.
Press.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good name for it. And then so we integrate all that feedback, which also gives us cleaner books, less typos, less errors, right? It doesn't really give people much time to play test. So where we rely on that is we play test everything in-house. We have a couple of other playtest groups. And with those playtest groups, especially with board games like our recent Doomguard board game, we we make sure we don't tell them how to play. We give them the rule book, we give them the materials, and we say, go for it. We'll watch. And we see what they get wrong.
Blind play testing. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's a blind play test. Yeah. And that helps a lot.
The gaming industry has changed dramatically since 1996, as we were saying at the beginning of the podcast. We have Kickstarter, streaming, digital tools, and VTTs. How has Pinnacle adapted to these changes, and what opportunities excite you most?
Well, we take full advantage of Kickstarter, obviously. That has been. We don't need Kickstarter for the money. We've got a good reserve to make sure that we can print everything we say we're going to ask people to chip into. But it's the best marketing we have. It's the best way to reach our audience and a little bit outside it. So that's a huge deal. I think VTT is very exciting. I actually am part of Metamorphic, which makes VTT assets for the Foundry and Roll20 and any other vendor who comes to us. But VTT is exciting to me because, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a very rural part of the world, and I know that it's hard in some places for people to find others who want to play your favorite game, right? You might be able to play D&D just about anywhere, but even that, it's more convenient to be able to hop online and play with people. And especially, and I don't know if this is true in Italy, but in America, we used to kind of stay in one place geographically and live near our families. But I'd say in the last 20 years, my generation, for sure, we move a lot. We go further abroad. We live far away. So if your gaming group is in one part of the country, and America's big, right? So if your gaming group is one state, you move to even just to the next one, you may not be able to drive 4 hours to play every week. So being on virtual tabletop is great.
Okay. Looking beyond 2026, what's your vision for the future of Savage Worlds and Deadlands?
So for Deadlands specifically, we have a pretty clear roadmap. I've already written a couple of the next campaign books that have come out, or that will come out. Some really talented freelancers wrote a campaign set and another adventure that's coming out. The location books, so the Mysterious Maze and the Infernal Southwest are on their way. So we've got that pretty well mapped out. As for Savage Worlds, East Texas University, second edition, or it's really not even a new edition. It's the next class, we call it. Comes out this year. And then next year, I believe we'll have Hell on Earth and Noir back for Deadlands. The final Reckoner will be defeated in Deadlands Lost Colony early next year. We have a couple of other big licenses that we're considering. We have the ability to get them. And of course, we're going to do Kingmaker for Pathfinder, which we're really excited about. That was the first thing I ever ran in Savage Pathfinder in-house. And Rifts, we have just all kinds of great stuff coming for Rifts. We've got a starter set for Deadlands, which is our first ever. If that does well, hopefully we'll do one for Rifts and so on. So we have a lot we want to do. The problem is we're only 4 full-time people. Yeah. We have a great number of part-time and freelance contributors, but there's only 4 of us, and that's a little hard. And we're trying to make board games now too. And I say that cautiously because I think the board game market has crashed quite a bit, but that's not the board game market we're interested in per se. We want to make smaller games that if you can't get together an RPG group, for example, we want to make a smaller board game that you and 3 other friends might be able to play and get the same kind of feeling that you get from an RPG, but without the commitment of, we're going to meet for 5 hours every day, once a week for the rest of our lives, right? And I think that's one of the attractions of board games. So that's the big stuff.
Are there any genre that or concept that you haven't explored yet and that you would be excited to tackle?
Yeah, I think so. I've played Savage BattleTech. We do not have that license. Okay, I want to make that clear. But we played it locally. Daryl Hayhurst ran a game of it, and it was amazing. We used the rules in the Sci-Fi Companion, played Savage BattleTech. That was fantastic. We've also played Savage Kaiju, like Godzilla, War and King Kong and so forth. We did put out a supplement for that, but I'd like to make that a real book. Otherwise, I think a Legend of the Five Rings, which we kind of did with Legend of the Ghost Mountain of Ghost Mountain. Shadowrun, I think, would be amazing. And one show I've always wanted to do. I don't know if you had this in Italy, but it's called Thundar the Barbarian. It was a cartoon show in the 80s.
I don't think
so. Concepts were by Jack Kirby and written by Steve Gerber, who did a lot of the early Marvel stuff, and it's just amazing. Love it. It's kind of post-apocalyptic fantasy.
Interesting. Final question. For someone who wants to follow in your footsteps, okay? Maybe they're running their own game store right now, or they have a crazy idea for mixing genres. What advice would you give them? And what would you do differently if you started today?
Wow. Well, that's a great question. I could probably talk about that for quite a while. I will try to boil it down. The gaming industry is a difficult industry. It's not a particularly lucrative industry. You'll make a whole lot more money being a dentist or a mechanic or anything else. But it is a lot of fun. I have enjoyed it. And these days, it has worked out pretty well for me and the team. But it took 20 years to get that level of stability. And it took some luck. Deadlands is the biggest thing that we've ever made ourselves, right? I've written other books that I thought were just as good, but Deadlands is the one that has caught people's attention and is loved for 30 years. So you don't always know what's going to catch on and be successful, right? It's the same in video games. We pour millions of dollars into a product, put it out, and then hope people will play it. You just don't know. These days, especially on the tabletop side, it's much easier than it used to be because of Kickstarter or crowdfunding platforms, right? So instead of investing all your money in design and art and time and printing and having 5,000 books in a warehouse and then nobody buys it, now you still got to invest in art and design because you have to show people what you're going to make, but you can keep that relatively limited and get the rest of it after it's proven itself out. But you certainly don't have to print it until you know that it's going to be successful, right? So you can do a Kickstarter, see if the idea is worthwhile, and if it's not, you cancel it, and you've only lost your art and design time rather than printing 5,000 books. Because
it's really revolutionary. It's been just a revolution, yeah.
Right. When the original Deadlands died, we had a warehouse full of some of the supplement books that weren't selling, and I had to rent trucks, load them up ourselves, and take them to a landfill. And that was painful, right? That's money that my family loaned me to pay for these things. They didn't sell. Those were bad times. And I am glad that the generation of designers, now and going forward does not have to do that. That was a lot of heartbreak and misery, right? And a lot of financial loss.
I imagine, yeah.
So, yeah. And if you want to, get your writing chops, that's easy. You can write for the different guild programs that people have on DriveThruRPG and build your own following and get feedback and see what people think about it. That wasn't available to the people of my generation, right? We had to submit articles to a game company that may or may not ever reply. And if they do, they may just rewrite it and not tell you what they didn't like about it. But now you can get that feedback yourself. And once you feel like you've learned enough to be a good writer, designer, whatever, then you can go to the companies that you like or start your own. And again, you have crowdfunding to help you get there rather than, we call it the 3 F's in America: friends, family, and fools, who might loan you money to start your game company and then lose it, right? So it's a far better time for creators than it's ever been. And it's in your power. If you work hard, if you pay attention, if you understand your audience, but also maintain a strong vision, you will greatly increase your chances of success.
Yeah, true. Wonderful. Let's do a quick rapid fire round to wrap up. Okay. Favorite Savage World setting that isn't yours?
Occult City just came out from Doghouse Rules, Carl Kiesler.
Huh.
Looks beautiful.
Best piece of advice you ever received about game design from others?
Game design. I won't say it's about game design, but Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, I did a game for him. It didn't happen, but I did a game for him. And he said, if you don't go broke 3 times before you're 30, you're not trying hard enough.
Oh, okay. One rule from early Deadlands you wish you could go back and change.
Vehicle armor.
Oh.
It's complicated. We did fix it in a sci-fi companion
Okay.
for hire.
Most surprising way you've seen someone use Savage Worlds?
Andy Hop's Low Life, where you play irradiated Twinkies or other bits of trash that have come to life in a post-apocalyptic world.
Perfect. Shane, where can our listeners find out more about Pinnacle's projects, especially all the exciting 30th anniversary content coming this year?
Deadlands.com.
Deadlands.com. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Shane, for joining us and sharing these insights into 30 years of Savage Gaming to our listeners. Thanks for listening to Joker Podcast, everyone. And until next time, keep those dice exploding. Bye.
Grazie.
Grazie a te.